A grieving millionaire's solitary life shatters when he discovers an unconscious woman in his forest wearing his dead wife's pendant, a necklace he watched being buried 3 years ago. Before we continue, consider my humble request to like and subscribe. It's completely free. The November rain struck Harrison's face like tiny needles as he ventured deeper into the forest than he had in months. 3 years after Caroline's death, he still walked these paths daily, a ritual that felt less like choice and more like the last thread tethering him to sanity. His boots sank into the sodden earth, each step requiring deliberate effort, mirroring the exhausting vigilance needed to keep grief at bay. Through the curtain of rain, something caught his eye, a splash of color against the monotone gray and brown of the dying forest. Harrison blinked water from his eyelashes, convinced he was seeing things, until the irregular shape resolved itself into a human form, slumped against the base of an ancient oak. A woman, unconscious or asleep, her dark hair plastered to pale skin. He approached cautiously, rainwater streaming from the brim of his hat, when a familiar glint at her throat stopped him cold. The pendant, a crescent moon embracing a silver tree, hung from a delicate chain around the stranger's neck. Caroline's pendant. His breath abandoned him as the forest floor seemed to tilt beneath his feet. "Impossible," he whispered, the word disappearing into the drumming rain as he dropped to his knees beside the woman, his trembling fingers hovering above the moonstone that he had watched being lowered into the ground with his wife 3 years ago. The woman's eyelids fluttered. Harrison pulled his hand back as if burned, nearly losing his balance in the mud. Her eyes opened, dark brown, not Caroline's hazel, but something in their shape sent another jolt through him. Her gaze, unfocused at first, sharpened with fear when she registered his presence. "Who are you?" Her voice was hoarse, barely audible above the rain. Harrison found himself unable to answer, his attention fixed on the pendant. Following his gaze, the woman's hand went to her throat, fingers closing protectively around the moonstone. "I asked who you are." Stronger now, with an edge of panic. "Harrison Wells." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "This is my property. You're trespassing." She struggled to sit upright, wincing. "I'm sorry. I don't remember how I got here." "What's your name?" Maya Collins." She glanced around, disoriented. "I was with David, my boyfriend. We had a fight and—" Her voice trailed off, confusion clouding her features. "And the necklace?" Harrison couldn't stop himself from asking, his voice sharper than intended. Her hand tightened around it. "David gave it to me, a few months ago." Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why?" Thunder cracked overhead. The woman, Maya, flinched, drawing her knees up to her chest. Despite his suspicion, Harrison couldn't leave her in the storm. Whatever game she was playing, he'd get to the bottom of it indoors. "You need to come with me. My house is nearby." Maya pressed herself against the tree trunk. "I'm not going anywhere with a stranger." Harrison almost laughed at the irony. "Says the woman wearing my dead wife's necklace." Her eyes widened. "What?" "That pendant. It belonged to my wife." Harrison stood, rainwater streaming from his coat. "You can stay here and catch pneumonia, or you can come to my house and explain how you got it. Your choice." 20 minutes later, Maya sat wrapped in a blanket before the library fireplace, her clothes drying in the adjacent bathroom. Harrison's housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, had provided dry clothes and hot tea before retreating with poorly concealed curiosity. Harrison stood at the window, watching the storm while stealing glances at their unexpected guest. In Caroline's old sweater, with her dark hair falling in waves around her face, the resemblance was unnerving. "You said this necklace belonged to your wife." Maya's voice cut through the silence. She'd removed the pendant and held it in her palm, studying it as if seeing it for the first time. "I swear David said he bought it at an estate sale." "Impossible. It was custom-made, one of a kind." Harrison crossed to the fireplace and picked up a silver frame from the mantel. "That's Caroline, my wife. Maya studied the photograph. She's beautiful. I'm so sorry for your loss. Her fingers traced the pendant in the picture, identical to the one she held. When did she? 3 years ago. Accident at Blackwood Point. They never found. He stopped himself. The pendant was buried with her. Maya's face paled. Mr. Wells, I don't know what's happening, but I promise you, David gave me this necklace 6 months ago. I had no idea. Who exactly is this David? Harrison interrupted, taking the frame from her hands and replacing it on the mantel. David Mercer, my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, I guess. She drew the blanket tighter. We were on a road trip, stopped in town for the night. We argued and he drove off, leaving me at the motel. I started walking. Her brow furrowed. I don't remember how I ended up in the woods. Harrison's cell phone buzzed. Nathan Reed, the detective who'd handled Caroline's case. He'd sent the photo of the pendant an hour ago, too disturbed to wait for a response. Excuse me. Harrison stepped into the hallway to take the call. Harrison. Reed's voice had the careful neutrality of a man delivering bad news. That pendant in the photo, where did you find it? Around the neck of a woman I found in the forest. Claims her boyfriend gave it to her. A long pause. Harrison, I don't want to alarm you, but I ran a check on recent missing persons. Last week, a woman named Maya Collins was reported missing from Greenville. Her boyfriend, David Mercer, is the primary suspect. Harrison glanced through the doorway at Maya, who was examining the books on his shelves. She's here now, says they had a fight and he left her. Harrison, according to the report, David Mercer has been missing for 6 weeks, and he has a history of violence against women who resemble. Reed hesitated. Who resemble Caroline, Harrison finished, a chill spreading through him that had nothing to do with his wet clothes. I'm coming over. Don't tell her anything. And Harrison, be careful. Harrison ended the call and returned to the library, seeing Maya with new eyes. Either she was lying or something far more disturbing was happening. The scar he'd noticed earlier, a small crescent behind her right ear, drew his attention again. Caroline had an identical mark, a childhood injury. Your boyfriend, Harrison said carefully. Do you have a photo of him? Maya reached for her pocket before remembering she was wearing borrowed clothes. My phone was in my jacket. Harrison crossed to the bathroom where her clothes hung drying, returning with her phone. It still works. She took it gratefully, her fingers leaving smudges on the rain-spotted screen as she pulled up a photo and turned it toward him. Harrison felt the blood drain from his face. The man in the picture, sandy-haired, square-jawed, was Vincent Harmon, his business partner. That's David? He asked, his voice remarkably steady despite the roaring in his ears. Maya nodded. David Mercer. Do you know him? No, Harrison lied, taking a step back. I've never seen him before in my life. Harrison set Maya's phone down on the side table, careful to keep his expression neutral. Whatever game Vincent was playing, he wouldn't risk tipping his hand. Not yet. Mrs. Winters will prepare a guest room for you, he said, moving toward the door. You should rest. Mr. Wells, Maya's voice stopped him. You recognized him, didn't you? Harrison turned slowly. What makes you say that? Your face, just for a second. She stood, letting the blanket fall away. In Caroline's clothes, the resemblance was even more unsettling. Please, I feel like I'm losing my mind, if you know David. I have a colleague named Vincent Harmon who bears a resemblance to your friend. Harrison kept his voice steady. But I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Vincent Harmon, Maya repeated, testing the name. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Fear? Maybe I could see a photo of him? To be sure. Before Harrison could answer, the doorbell rang. Detective Reed had made good time. That would be Detective Reed, Harrison explained. He handled my wife's case. I sent him a photo of the pendant. Maya's hand went instinctively to her throat where the necklace had been. Am I in trouble? That depends on how you came by that necklace. Mrs. Winters showed Reed into the library. The detective hadn't changed much in 3 years, still barrel-chested with salt and pepper hair cropped close to his skull. His eyes swept the room, assessing Maya with professional detachment. Ms. Collins, I'm Detective Nathan Reed. He produced his badge. I understand you've had quite an ordeal. I don't remember much, Maya admitted, sinking back onto the couch. Just walking in the rain after my boyfriend left me at the motel. Reed took a seat across from her. Which motel was that? The Pinewood, just off the highway. Reed nodded. And when exactly did you last see David Mercer? Maya frowned. Yesterday afternoon, around 4. That's interesting, Reed said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. Because David Mercer was reported missing 6 weeks ago. By you. The color drained from Maya's face. That's impossible. I was with him yesterday. We drove from Portland together. Harrison exchanged a glance with Reed. Either Maya was lying or something far more disturbing was happening. Ms. Collins, would you mind if I took your fingerprints? Standard procedure in missing persons cases. Maya hesitated, then nodded. As Reed took her prints with a portable scanner, Harrison stepped into the hallway to call Dr. Eliza Chen. If anyone could make sense of this situation, it would be her. 20 minutes later, Reed joined Harrison in his study. Her prints match Maya Collins, Reed confirmed. But there's more. The prints are on file because she was treated at Westview Psychiatric 3 months ago. Involuntary commitment after a dissociative episode. Harrison raised an eyebrow. What kind of episode? She was found wandering on Blackwood Point, where your wife died, claiming to be looking for her sister. Reed's expression was grim. Harrison, there's something else you should know. I've been keeping tabs on similar cases since Caroline's death. 3 women with physical characteristics similar to your wife have gone missing in neighboring counties. Harrison felt his chest tighten. And you think Vincent? I don't know what to think yet. Reed glanced toward the library, but I'd keep a close eye on your guest and maybe invest in some security cameras. After Reed left, Harrison found Maya examining a photograph on the far wall, Caroline standing before an unfinished painting, her smile radiant. She was an artist, Maya said without turning around. Yes, how did you know? Maya's fingers brushed the frame. Her hands, the way she holds the brush. She turned to Harrison. I paint too. Nothing professional, just a hobby. Another coincidence that felt anything but. Harrison's phone chimed, a text from Eliza agreeing to visit tomorrow. He was about to respond when a noise from upstairs caught his attention. A thud, followed by the creak of floorboards. Did you hear that? He asked. Maya nodded, her eyes wide. Harrison moved to the fireplace and removed an old baseball bat from the umbrella stand, a concession to Caroline, who had worried about their isolated location. Stay here, he instructed, heading for the stairs. The second floor was dark, except for moonlight streaming through the windows, the storm having finally passed. Harrison moved silently down the hallway, checking rooms as he went. Nothing seemed disturbed until he reached Caroline's studio, the door ajar, despite the lock he'd installed years ago. Inside, the sheets covering her paintings and supplies had been disturbed. Harrison swept the room with his gaze, finding nothing missing but sensing someone had been there. He was about to leave when he noticed wet footprints on the hardwood, too large to be Maya's. Downstairs, a scream shattered the silence. Harrison took the stairs 2 at a time, skidding into the library to find Maya backing away from the window, her face pale with terror. Someone was looking in, she gasped. A man! Harrison crossed to the window, peering into the darkness. The security lights illuminated the empty garden, but at the edge of the trees, branches swayed unnaturally, as if recently disturbed. I'm calling Reed, he said, reaching for his phone. Maya grabbed his arm. It was him. It was David, but… She shook her head in confusion. His hair was different, like in your photo, of Vincent. Harrison guided her to the couch. Maya, I need you to tell me everything about David. How you met, what he told you about himself. Everything. She took a deep breath. We met 6 months ago at an art therapy class in Portland. He said he was a consultant, traveled a lot. He was charming, attentive. Her voice faltered. He was especially interested in my paintings, said they reminded him of someone. Did he ask about your family, your past? Maya nodded slowly. He seemed fascinated by the fact that I was adopted, that I never knew my birth parents. Her eyes widened. You don't think… I don't know what to think. Harrison sat beside her. But Vincent has been pushing me to sell this property for 3 years, since Caroline died. The land is valuable. His company wants to develop it. What does that have to do with me? Harrison hesitated. I don't know. But the pendant, your resemblance to Caroline, your connection to Vincent, none of it feels like coincidence. Maya's hand went to the small scar behind her ear, the same location as Caroline's. Mr. Wells, Harrison, there's something else. Since I arrived here, I've been having these flashes, places I've never been that feel familiar, like that room upstairs, the one with the paintings covered in sheets. I can see it clearly, but I've never been up there. Harrison stared at her. How did you know about the sheets? Maya's face went blank with confusion. I don't know. The security system chimed, indicating motion at the front gate. Harrison checked the camera feed on his phone. It's Dr. Chen, he said, a friend of mine and Caroline's therapist. You think I need a therapist? Maya asked, an edge to her voice. I think we both do. Harrison moved to the door. And Eliza is the only person I trust right now. Dr. Eliza Chen removed her rain-spattered glasses, her sharp eyes moving between Harrison and Maya. In her early 60s, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to holding others' secrets. The library had grown claustrophobic as the night deepened, rain returning to drum against the windows. You said this was urgent, Harrison. Her attention settled on Maya. I didn't expect company. This is Maya Collins, Harrison said. Maya, Dr. Eliza Chen. Eliza extended her hand, but froze halfway through the gesture, her eyes widening almost imperceptibly. Harrison had seen that look only once before, at Caroline's funeral. Have we met? Maya asked, accepting the handshake. I don't believe so. Eliza's voice was carefully neutral. Harrison, might I have a word, privately? In the kitchen, Eliza gripped the counter edge. Who is she? I found her in the woods this afternoon, wearing Caroline's pendant. Eliza's normally composed expression faltered. That's not possible. There's more. Harrison lowered his voice. She has the same scar as Caroline, behind her right ear. She paints, and she knows things about the house she couldn't possibly know. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, but she claims to be dating Vincent, except she knows him as David Mercer. Eliza took a sharp breath. Harrison, we need to tread carefully here. If Vincent is involved in something sinister, then I want to know why, Harrison finished, and what it has to do with Caroline. When they returned to the library, Maya stood by the fireplace, studying Caroline's photographs with unsettling intensity. She was happy, Maya said without turning. In these photos? Yes, Harrison agreed. She was. But not always. Maya touched a frame where Caroline's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Not here. Eliza and Harrison exchanged glances. That photo had been taken 2 weeks before Caroline's death. Maya, Eliza began gently, Harrison tells me you've been experiencing some unusual phenomena since arriving here. Maya turned. I'm not crazy, if that's what you're asking. That's not what I'm asking at all, Eliza assured her. But you've had episodes in the past, dissociative states. Maya's eyes narrowed. How do you know about that? Detective Reed mentioned your stay at Westview, Harrison interjected. We're trying to understand what's happening. You think I'm making this up? Maya's voice rose. That I stole this necklace and made up a story about David? No one is accusing you of anything, Eliza said soothingly, but trauma can manifest in unexpected ways. Your mind might be trying to tell you something. Like what? I don't know yet. Eliza gestured to the couch. May I ask you some questions? While Eliza spoke quietly with Maya, Harrison retreated to his study. Vincent's number went straight to voicemail, unusual for a man who prided himself on constant availability. Harrison pulled up their company records, searching for any connection to David Mercer. Nothing. He tried a broader search, scanning news archives for both names. A local article from 3 years ago caught his attention. A business profile of Vincent featuring a photograph of him with his cousin, Daniel Mercer. The resemblance was striking, though Daniel's hair was darker, his build slighter. The article mentioned Daniel's work in the acquisitions department of Harmon Development. Harrison pulled up the company website. No Daniel Mercer was listed among current employees. He dug deeper, finding only that Daniel had left the company shortly after Caroline's death. A soft knock interrupted his search. Eliza stood in the doorway, her expression troubled. She's resting, Eliza said, entering and closing the door. I gave her a mild sedative. Harrison, there's something you need to know. What is it? Maya exhibits symptoms consistent with cryptomnesia, hidden memories surfacing as if they're new insights. But there's something else. Eliza hesitated. When I asked about her childhood, she described a recurring dream about a treehouse with a red door and a rope swing, a place where she felt safe. Harrison felt the room tilt. Caroline's father built her a treehouse like that. It's still on my parents' property. That's not all. The scar behind her ear. She says she got it falling from a rope swing when she was 7, the same story Caroline told. Harrison's mouth went dry. What are you saying? I'm not sure. Eliza removed her glasses. But I'm beginning to wonder if Maya and Caroline might be related. Sisters, perhaps. Caroline was an only child. That she knew of. Eliza fixed him with a steady gaze. Harrison, was Caroline adopted? Number. But she never knew her father. He abandoned her mother before Caroline was born. The implication struck him. You think they could be half-sisters? It's possible. It would explain the physical resemblance, the shared memories. A crash from upstairs cut her off. Harrison was on his feet instantly, Eliza close behind. They found Maya in Caroline's studio, standing amid fallen canvases. But it wasn't the mess that stopped Harrison cold. It was the painting on the easel. Maya had uncovered one of Caroline's unfinished works and begun completing it, her brushstrokes indistinguishable from his wife's. I had to finish it, Maya whispered, paintbrush still in hand. It was calling to me. Eliza steadied herself against the doorframe. Maya, how did you know what Caroline intended to paint? I just knew. Maya stared at the canvas, a forest scene with 2 small figures beneath a massive oak. This place is important. Something happened here. Harrison recognized the location, the spot where he had proposed to Caroline, where he had given her the oak leaf pendant, the same design that now hung from Maya's neck. Did David ever take you there? Harrison asked. Maya shook her head. I've never been there, except ... She closed her eyes. In my dreams. Harrison's phone buzzed, a text message from Reed. Vincent Harmon's real name is Victor Harmon. His brother Vincent died 15 years ago. Need to talk as soon as possible. As Harrison read the message, the studio lights flickered, then went out. The security system's alarm blared once before falling silent. The backup power had failed. "Someone cut the power," Harrison said, moving to the window. In the darkness below, a flashlight beam swept across the garden, moving toward the house. "We need to go," Harrison urged, taking Maya's arm. "Now." But Maya stood frozen, staring at the painting. "I remember now," she whispered. "Caroline was looking for me, and he stopped her." Harrison guided Maya and Eliza through the darkened hallway, the beam of his phone flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. The old house creaked and settled around them, each sound amplified by the darkness. "The cellar," Harrison whispered. "There's a passage that leads to the groundskeeper's cottage. We can call for help from there." As they descended the narrow stairs, Maya gripped Harrison's arm. "I've been here before," she murmured. "In the storm, 3 years ago." Harrison stopped. "That's impossible. You couldn't have—" "The door sticks unless you lift and push," Maya continued, her voice distant. "There's a broken step, 3rd from the bottom." Eliza caught Harrison's eye in the dim light. They both stepped carefully over the 3rd step. The cellar smelled of damp earth and old wine, the temperature dropping noticeably. Harrison led them past dusty shelves to a heavy wooden door hidden behind an old bookcase. "Caroline showed me this passage," he explained, pushing against the door. It didn't budge. "It hasn't been used in years." "Lift and push," Maya reminded him. Harrison hesitated, then lifted the door slightly while pushing. It swung open with a groan. "How did you know that?" he demanded. Before Maya could answer, a crash echoed from upstairs. Someone had broken in. They hurried through the passage, a narrow tunnel reinforced with wooden beams that smelled of soil and decay. After 50 yards, they emerged into a small stone cellar beneath the cottage. In the groundskeeper's living room, Harrison tried the landline. Dead. "He cut the phone lines too," Harrison muttered, pulling out his cell phone. No signal. "Signal jammer," Eliza suggested grimly. Maya moved to the window, peering through the curtains toward the main house. A flashlight beam swept across the ground floor windows. "Just one person," she observed. "For now." Harrison checked the cottage's modest kitchen, returning with a large knife. "We need to get to my car." "It's too exposed," Eliza argued. "We should wait for Reed." "When is he coming?" Maya asked. "I don't know." Harrison glanced at his watch. "But he always checks in when he's sending important information." A sudden beam of light swept across the cottage windows. They ducked down, holding their breath as footsteps circled the building. "He knows we're here," Harrison whispered. Maya's hand went to the pendant at her throat. "Give me your phone," she whispered to Harrison. "There's no signal." "Please." Harrison handed her his phone. Maya opened the photo gallery, scrolling rapidly through images until she found what she was looking for, a picture of Caroline standing before a large oak tree, the same one from the painting. "I know where to go," she said. "Somewhere he won't think to look." The back door of the cottage opened onto the forest. Rain had resumed, a steady drizzle that muffled their footsteps as Maya led them along a barely visible path. Harrison found himself following without question, watching as she navigated the darkness with impossible familiarity. After 20 minutes, they reached a clearing dominated by a massive oak tree. Near its base, partially hidden by undergrowth, was a small entrance to what appeared to be an old storm shelter. "Caroline used to come here," Maya said, kneeling to clear debris from the entrance. "It was her special place. She never told anyone but me." Harrison stared at her. "What are you saying?" Maya met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the faint moonlight filtering through the clouds. "I think Caroline was my sister, and I think I was here the night she died." Inside the shelter, Harrison found an old emergency lantern that still worked. The small concrete room contained a few supplies: bottled water, blankets, a first aid kit, all covered in a thick layer of dust except for a metal box placed prominently on a shelf, wiped clean. "She left this for me," Maya whispered, reaching for the box. "I remember now. She contacted me 3 years ago, said she'd discovered something about our birth parents, something dangerous. She asked me to meet her, but I thought it was a scam." Maya's voice cracked. "I never came." The box was locked. Maya removed the pendant from around her neck, studying it for a moment before pressing the moonstone. It clicked, and a small key emerged from the back of the setting. Harrison and Eliza watched in stunned silence as Maya unlocked the box. Inside lay a USB drive, a birth certificate, and a letter addressed to my sister. Maya's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. "If you're reading this," she read aloud, "then my suspicions were correct. Vincent, or Victor, as he truly is, has discovered our connection and what it means for the Blackwood property." She looked up. "Property?" "The forest," Harrison explained. "It's part of my land." Maya continued reading. "Our birth mother owned the mineral rights to the eastern forest, rights that were divided between her daughters upon her death, rights that Vincent's company desperately wants." Maya frowned. "I don't understand." "There's a rare earth mineral deposit under the eastern forest," Harrison said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "Vincent's company has been trying to acquire mining rights for years. Caroline always refused to sell. And with both sisters' signatures," Eliza added, "they could access the mineral rights, but if one sister died mysteriously, the rights would transfer to next of kin," Harrison finished, "which would have been me, and Vincent has been pushing me to sell since Caroline died." Maya continued reading. "I've gathered evidence of Vincent's previous attempts to acquire these rights through intimidation and fraud. It's all here, on this drive, along with proof of our relationship. Find Detective Reed. He'll help you. And Maya, I'm sorry we never got the chance to know each other. Your sister, Caroline." Harrison took the birth certificate from the box. "Caroline and Maya Winters," he read. "Twins, born to Elizabeth Winters and Victor Harmon Sr." "His father," Harrison breathed. "That's why he's been after the land. It's his birthright in his mind." A twig snapped outside the shelter. They froze, the lantern casting long shadows on the walls. Through the small entrance, a pair of boots became visible, then legs, as someone crouched down to peer inside. "Harrison?" Detective Reed's face appeared, rain-streaked and concerned. "Thank God, I've been looking everywhere." They emerged from the shelter, Reed's flashlight beam sweeping the clearing to ensure they were alone. "Vincent was at your house," Reed informed them. "When I arrived, he fled into the forest. My men are searching the area now." "He calls himself David Mercer," Maya said. "He's been manipulating me for months." Reed's eyebrows rose. "Maya Collins? We've been looking for you too. Your therapist reported you missing 3 days ago." Maya frowned. 3 days? But I was with David just yesterday." "Memory gaps," Eliza said gently. "Likely drug-induced. He's been keeping you disoriented." Harrison handed Reed the USB drive. "Everything we need to know is on here. Caroline left evidence." Reed took the drive, his expression grim. "Let's get you all somewhere safe. We can—" A gunshot echoed through the forest. Reed staggered forward, a dark stain spreading across his shoulder. Behind him, Vincent stepped into the clearing, pistol raised. "I'll take that," he said, gesturing to the USB drive that had fallen from Reed's hand. "And the pendant too, Maya. Family heirloom should stay in the family." Vincent's face was a mask of cold determination as he stepped closer, gun trained on Maya. In the dim moonlight filtering through the trees, Harrison could see the family resemblance between them. The same sharp cheekbones, the same intensity in their eyes. "You're making a mistake, Vincent," Harrison said, slowly shifting to place himself between Vincent and Maya. "My name is Victor. he snapped. "Vincent was my brother, and the only mistake was my father leaving what was rightfully ours to his secret daughters." His gaze shifted to Maya. "I've spent years putting this together, tracking you down, gaining your trust. I was this close to having you sign over the rights voluntarily." Maya clutched the pendant. "You killed my sister." "An accident," Vincent replied, his voice hollow. "She figured out who I was, confronted me on the cliff. Things got physical." His expression hardened. "The result was unfortunate but necessary." Reed groaned on the ground, hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. Vincent kept the gun trained on him. "The pendant and the drive," Vincent repeated. "Now." Maya took a step forward, the pendant dangling from her fingers. "You want it? Here." She swung the pendant in a wide arc, the moonstone catching the faint light. Vincent's eyes followed it instinctively, just long enough for Harrison to lunge forward, tackling him to the rain-soaked ground. The gun fired, the shot going wild as the two men struggled. Vincent was younger, stronger, but Harrison fought with the rage of 3 years of grief. They rolled across the clearing, each trying to gain control of the weapon. Maya rushed to help Reed, while Eliza grabbed the fallen USB drive. As Vincent gained the upper hand, pinning Harrison beneath him, a beam of light swept across the clearing. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Vincent froze, then pressed the gun harder against Harrison's chest. "Back off or I shoot!" "You're surrounded, Harmon," came an authoritative voice, Reed's partner, Jones. "There's nowhere to go." Vincent's eyes darted around frantically. In that moment of distraction, Harrison drove his knee upward, sending the gun flying from Vincent's grasp. Police officers swarmed the clearing, subduing Vincent as he screamed about birthrights and family legacy. As paramedics attended to Reed, Harrison found Maya standing by the ancient oak tree, her fingers tracing the bark where Caroline had carved their initials years ago, CW plus HW, inside a heart. "She loved you very much," Maya said quietly. "She would have loved knowing her sister," Harrison replied. Maya smiled sadly. "We had the same dreams, you know. All my life, I dreamed of this forest, this tree. Now I know why." She closed her eyes briefly. "Caroline found me once. I just didn't recognize what I'd found." 2 weeks later, the morning sun filtered through the library windows as Harrison sorted through Caroline's journals. The investigation had confirmed everything: the twins separated at birth, Vincent's elaborate scheme to gain the mineral rights, his involvement in Caroline's death. With Vincent awaiting trial, a strange peace had settled over Blackwood Forest. The doorbell rang, and Harrison opened the front door to find Maya on the porch, a canvas tucked under her arm. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here," she said. "Reed mentioned you might sell the property." "I considered it," Harrison admitted, leading her inside. "Too many ghosts. And now? Now I think Caroline would want me to stay, to protect what she died for." In the library, Maya unwrapped her canvas, the completed forest painting with 2 small figures beneath the oak tree. "I finished it," she said. "It helped me understand everything." Harrison studied the painting. Under Maya's hand, the 2 figures had become clearer. 2 women, their faces turned toward each other, one extending her hand to the other. "Sisters finding each other," Harrison murmured. "Sisters who never got the chance," Maya corrected gently. She touched the pendant at her throat, now confirmed as one of a matching pair Caroline had commissioned after discovering her twins' existence. "I thought you might want this back." Harrison shook his head. "It belongs with you now." They moved to the porch, gazing out at the forest that had brought them together and nearly torn them apart. "What will you do now?" Harrison asked. "Finish my degree. Keep painting." Maya smiled tentatively. "Maybe visit sometimes if that's all right. This place is part of me too." Caroline would like that. As Maya prepared to leave, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Dr. Chen stepped out, carrying a file. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, "but I found something I thought you both should see." Inside the file was a faded photograph of twin baby girls, Caroline and Maya, cradled in their mother's arms, written on the back in elegant script, "My daughters, my hope." "Your mother left this with her attorney," Eliza explained, "to be delivered to Caroline on her 30th birthday. She died before she could receive it." Maya traced her finger over the image of the woman who had given birth to her, then separated from her. Did she know that we were trying to find each other? "I don't know," Eliza admitted, "but she made sure you would have the chance, eventually." As the spring sun warmed the porch, Harrison watched Maya studying the photograph, the first tangible connection to the family she never knew. Despite the pain that had brought them here, something new was beginning, a connection that would honor Caroline's memory while allowing them both to move forward. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Harrison stood with Maya and Eliza at the dedication of the Caroline Winters Memorial Garden. The forest path that had once led Harrison to Maya now guided visitors through native plantings and art installations, featuring Caroline's work alongside Maya's complementary pieces. At the center of the garden stood the ancient oak tree, now surrounded by a circular bench. Harrison and Maya had planted twin saplings nearby, one for each sister. "A living memorial," Reed remarked, his arm still in a sling but healing well. Caroline would have approved. Maya nodded, her hand going instinctively to the pendant. "She led me here in her way. Now others can find peace here too." As visitors explored the garden, Harrison felt something settle within him. Not an end to grief, but a transformation of it into something that could coexist with hope. The forest that had witnessed tragedy now nurtured new growth, much like the human hearts that had found healing within its bounds. Maya joined him by the oak tree, her expression serene. "Thank you," she said simply, "for helping me find her, even if it was too late." "Not too late," Harrison corrected, watching the sunlight filter through leaves that had witnessed centuries of human stories. "Different than she planned, but not too late." Together they stood in comfortable silence, two people connected by loss and found through love, a family forged not by blood alone, but by the truth that had finally emerged from the shadows of Blackwood Forest. For now, that was enough. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in the power of love to break down walls and bridge any divide. Please do comment your feedback and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of family, redemption, and the triumph of love over pride. Remember, it's never too late to change your story.